That's, well, welcome. Glad to see everybody here. Anybody ever go to the Kingsville presentations? They had a good one this afternoon around 2 o'clock. It was on Robinson Screwdriver. The guest speaker didn't show up, so they substituted in and talked on everything you wanted to know about the Robinson Screwdriver. It was kind of nice that somebody jumped in and did that. So anyway, I'm glad Deborah Honor showed up today, so I don't have to give you a presentation on the Robinson Screwdriver. Okay, today's our St. Patrick's Day presentation. We're recording today. Later, if you may ask questions and things like that, some of it may end up on the recorder. But we do that so you can see the past presentations that we've had on the, and they're available on our site. They're basically YouTube presentations or recordings. Any new visitors today? Any families that you're researching? Any particular family group?
A couple. Appleyards and fairs. Israel, which was ironic considering when the Fred C. Israel Auditorium.
Oh, okay.
So that was a new one.
What was the first name?
Appleyard.
Appleyard.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Any family groups back there?
Francis.
Francis from Amherst?
Francis.
Oh, Francis, sorry.
And McLean's.
McLean's?
They're not in Essex County. They're all the east of Ontario.
Okay. So, and Spencer's. Okay. So we usually go through that just in case there's someone else that has a connection. You got your hand up, or you? Yeah.
Flat.
Flat.
Oh.
Okay.
Trying to trace the origin of the name.
Yeah, that's always a good challenge sometimes, considering they change names and.
I used to hear it was Scottish, and then I heard it from York Island.
Okay. Yeah, I spent probably 10 years tracing down what I thought was an English name, but it turned out to be an Irish. So things you learn as you go. So, okay. So if anybody has Appleyards in your heritage, there's someone you can talk to. So, OGS, we've been around for a long time. We have some original founding members in the audience here, at least of the Essex branch. We've now added on special interest groups like Irish and Scottish. Those are becoming quite large, actually. We have 500 members, I believe, so quite a lot of interest in that. The OGS website, we've got lots and lots of stuff on there, especially member stuff. I know we have a lot of scanning going on at the moment. Linda, who's taking a vacation this week, she's not scanning, so I'll miss her. Anyway, she's been posting a lot of this stuff on the members only. She's the one that's now in charge of uploading all of the member information and stuff that she's been scanning for the last couple of years. So. But lots of new stuff on there. Someone was talking about DNA. They've got 18 hours of DNA webinars up there that are available. So it's quite. I started to go through some today. It's interesting. Facebook groups are the OGS itself, the provincially of 5,000 members. There's a Canadian genealogy group. I don't think there are like 3,000. So the OGS is quite popular for the website or for the Facebook site. Some of the new benefits. This is the 18 hours of DNA that I was talking about that are on the OGS website. So DNA is becoming very popular. This is a fairly good book by Blaine Bettinger. If you're at all interested in how to get it, for $29, it's a very good starter book for learning about DNA. And if you're at all interested in DNA, the Kent branch are putting together what do you call it, a conference?
Just a workshop, half-day workshop. Next month,
April 21st, in Chatham. I highly recommend it if you're at all interested in learning about DNA and getting involved in DNA. It's just up the road. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. Other things we've got is MyHeritage. How many are involved with MyHeritage website? No? Okay. It's one of the benefits anyway with OGS is you can get MyHeritage for $10, and You can build, I don't think with this library edition, you can't build your own family tree, but if you get the full version, you can build your own family tree on there. And then get DNA and upload it there and find cousins. And you thought you had spare time before, you won't have that spare time. The cousins start getting in touch with you. So. The Essex branch, we've been, yeah, we've got, that's what the, yeah, so we're like a club, and we help each other basically with learning about DNA or tracking down families. We don't necessarily do the searches for you, but we kind of work together in doing those things. We're building up our collection all the time, and now we're trying to digitize it and get it available to everybody electronically. These presentations as an educational thing. And the website will be getting better. We're working on it. It's got a bit of a problem at the moment, but we're going to try to correct that in the next month. Our website, I'm going to get up. I've been on the website. Is it? Not too many. So, okay. Anyway, we're a lot of indexes are on the website and available. There's the YouTubes are on there quite a bit. So.
If you have Essex County folks, the website's free, so just pop on it and snoop around. You might find an index that directs you to a resource that we have. So.
And yep, so we'll try to keep that a little bit more up to date as we go along. Facebook is very popular. We've set that up to help everyone network with each other, and that was the main purpose for setting up a Facebook group. So we have over 500 there now, and it keeps growing. And things that are on there is like maps. Someone posted this more recently of the various maps that are available, so again, it's everybody on Facebook helping each other out and setting up interest. So if you're at all, I think that's what I like about Facebook, is just being able to get on with these kinds of groups, people that have like interests and share information. So again, the Facebook pages are on our website. If you're looking for all our links to Twitter and Facebook, they're on the website. Upcoming events, next week we're going to go to Eckers in Essex. We'll probably set up some kind of a carpool to go there, but it's to find out what they have. So we're trying to, connect a little bit more networking. But I think if you've never been to the Essex one, you'd be amazed by the collection that they have, and land records and things like that. So it's kind of nice to go to these kinds of places. We've been to Kingsville and had a tour of their facility and presentation. We've been to the Conver Museum and had a road trip there. We're planning a trip to Harrow, to Ayers, and at some point we're going to go to Leamington and visit the. You could be our connection. So, and again, back to DNA, we've got in May a presentation. The 10 people are basically coming down and giving a presentation on the DNA. So, so after the April workshop, you can follow up with a May presentation here. So again, that's the DNA workshop in May. So so registration is on the Kent website, PayPal and credit cards and things like that. So, and it's not very much. I think it was $25 basically, or $20 for members. So I think it just costs more gas to get there than anything else. So
you guys will have to carpool.
There you go. Yeah, or the train. I love the train. Take the train because it's really you just walk up the street. Or are you holding it at the?
At the library. Yep. Okay,
good. So yeah, if you take the train, it's really good.
And if you're not really handy or PayPal or don't feel comfortable, you can just mail a check into the library.
Okay. So, conference. Anyone going to the conference? Any speakers at the conference that we know? Our guest speaker tonight is going to be speaking at the conference. So anyway, well worth going. And I just found out today, if you're just wanted to go up and see Marketplace and hear small little presentations, it's free. You just have to get yourself up there, and you can go there and buy books and things like that. They've always had a lot of really good stuff for sale. And this year they're having what do they call these? The mini.
They're fast tracks.
Fast tracks.
Just little 15-minute how-tos, and people promoting different things, so. And they have a lot of good deals. Last year at conference, Ancestry had their DNA kits on for 69, or was it 59? 69, I think. So, they're pretty good deals.
Yeah.
Living DNA was really short.
And, yeah.
Yep.
Was really.
Yeah, it was there, so. Oh, I went to a DNA workshop in Detroit, the Detroit Genealogical, Detroit Society for Genealogical Research or something like that. I keep messing it up. But anyway, I go there monthly for a DNA workshop, and Living DNA is now accepting DNA tests from other sites. So, but the results won't be done until August, so that'll another avenue for uploading your autosomal DNA. So if you're interested in what to do with your DNA results, you pop them into these other places. So anyway, this should be good. Cindy's going to talk on this one.
There, I guess.
So I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to go to Roots Tech, which is in Salt Lake City, and that is the biggest conference in North America, to represent the Ontario Genealogical Society with the group. While we were there, we did lots of work. It wasn't a fun research trip. We worked. And one of the young fellows from Family Tree Maker came over to our booth, and he actually is being booked at a conference in Ottawa, September 28th weekend. He would like to do a Ontario tour, stopping along all the branches and giving a presentation on Family Tree Maker. All the updates, how to use it, just basically a whole family tree presentation. So we thought we'd take an opportunity to throw our hat in the ring. So we don't know exactly what the time frame is. So either we will be 2 weeks before that conference, so it'll be like the first or the last 2 weeks in September, or he'll start in Ottawa and work his way back down to Utah. So we'll be at the end. So we'll either be at the beginning of the tour or at the end. But I just wanted to put it out there. I don't know how many people use Family Tree Maker, but there's some really good stuff there, and there's some updates that he can talk to, and just some different things. So.
I thought at one time they'd canceled that, we couldn't buy that.
Well, now it is taken over by McKeeve, took it over, and there was an update.
They had canceled it.
Yeah, so it's 2017. I actually purchased it because I was in the same thing. It was, they were getting rid of it, and then another company purchased it, and so he can speak to that. So that's coming down the road if you have that. So I just wanted to throw that out there and let you know.
Okay. Now Cindy put together all these slides, so I came across this slide. Cindy, what's up? Cindy does everything. Tonight's presentation, we have the honor of having Deborah Honor here. And we're going to talk about researching family trees in the newspapers, I suspect, and what newspapers are up there. So without any further words from you, I'd like to Deborah come up. Just switching music.
Okay, now I gotta remember how to use this thing. Oh, it works. Okay, good. So I thought tonight, I was asked by the executive to talk about newspapers because I did yeah, that's falling down. Because I did an article in the last newsletter, and they said, oh, you need to come and talk about newsletters or about newspapers. So that's what I had to write about, so this is what you're going to get. Then they wrote up what they thought I was going to say, and I said, oh dear, I've got to write something different. So I hope it turns out okay. So with newspapers, you can access them online, and they're on many different websites. And they're all have different amounts of stuff from newspapers. They're not all the same. So because there's so many of them out there, I only chose 5. Otherwise it gets to be too confusing. And they all differ. They differ in the type of newspaper or journals that they contain. They are different in the number of newspapers that they use, the different areas that they cover, or the different countries that are covered, the dates that the newspapers are covered, because newspapers will start, the newspapers will stop. Like one might start in 1830 and it ends in 1835. Another newspaper might start in 1800 but is still running today. So it depends on what they also will give to the website to put online. So you might find like the one that goes to 2018, but it started in 1830, they might go from 1830 to 1900 online. So I will briefly discuss the 5 different websites and what they have to offer, as well as showing you how to find information on your family using these websites, okay? So these are the websites that I've decided to practice on. They're basically some of the major ones that we have. So there's Ancestry.ca. If you're in Canada, it's .ca. If you're using your computer in the States, it'll come up Ancestry.com. If you're in Ireland, it'll come up Ancestry.ie immediately. It doesn't even go to your own website. Genealogybank.com, findmypast.com, myheritage.com, and I'm going to show you how to use the library edition from OGS. And then the last one is a free one. All the others are subscriptions. And it's Our Ontario Newspapers, which is through SWOTA. And that's the Southwestern Ontario Digital Archive. And that's what I based most of my article in the newsletter for the branch. Now, one of the things you should know when you're working with these different websites, I feel anyways, is to know what countries they started in. So Ancestry started in the United States. Genealogy Bank started in the United States. Find My Past started in England, in the United Kingdom. MyHeritage actually started in Israel. And the Ontario newspaper started in Ontario, Canada. So when you know where they came from, you can figure out where their base, the beginning of their collection would have started. So with MyHeritage, they probably have more stuff on the eastern countries of Europe than they would have on others, but it depends on how much they can get from each of the countries. Okay, in January I learned how to capture a page from a computer. So the more I do talks, the more I learn how to do things with the computer. And so I've been able to capture the pages off my computer to add to the talk so that it's easier to work with and I don't have to work with the computer live. If we've got time at the end, I can get on live and I'll show you how to do some things with the last website. So with Ancestry, I don't find it all that good for newspapers, but you go up to search, where I put the blue arrow. Oh, this was something I learned 3 days ago, how to put arrows on. So there might be a little bit too many arrows in all the websites. So you go to search, and you go down to search, and you go to card catalog. And up here it says card catalog, and you go down the display, and there's newspapers right there at that orange one. And then you can filter by the country. So they've got Canada, United Kingdom, France, Ireland, US, Europe, Australia, Africa, Asia, North America, and Oceania. And then on the side, they tell you how many different newspapers they have. So when I went to newspapers and did Canada. And here's one. Ontario, Canada Obituaries, 1999 to 2001 Kitchener Record, and the Windsor Star. They've got the Windsor Star newspaper. Not. They don't have the whole Windsor Star. This is what they've got. They've got a book, Death Notices in the Windsor Star, taken from the Windsor Star. So they've copied somebody's book and put it online, and they say that's the newspaper. That's all they've got from the Windsor Star, are those death notices for those dates. So that's why I'm saying what they have on their newspaper website isn't as good as it probably could be. The newspapers they do have, they have for Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and they say Ontario. So it's not even all of Canada. It's just certain provinces. They have the Ottawa Journal on there. They have US newspapers on there that go back farther, but most of them are modern and no Detroit newspapers. None. They do have one from Jamaica. You can sort by popularity, database title, date updated, date added, and record count. Okay. So now we've got the genealogybank.com. You have to pay. This is another one that you have to subscribe to. I got into it just so that I could talk to you about it today, but it just happened to be at the point that I joined it, it was half price.
What is the cost of it?
I forget. This was a while back. Life has been too busy for me lately, and so remembering numbers isn't that great right now. This is an excellent site for the US. If you want newspapers, this is one. And they also seem to be working with another website where you have to pay, and it's newspapers.com. I think that's what it's called. But I didn't have time to go through that one. They have newspapers for the United States of all 50 states. You can browse by state. So you go to collections, you can browse by state, by title, and recently added. So if you're into this website quite a bit, then you could just go to the ones that are newly added, and then you don't have to go through all the old ones that you've already checked. Once you're in collections in the archives, they've got birth records, marriage records, passenger lists, historical newspapers starting at 1704 to 1977. I was in it just for a brief amount of time, and I tried to find something on the family, and I came up with this article on Brother Explains. He tells why Captain Honor, which is the Irish spelling of our last name, was on the Owen. He was a sea captain on the Great Lakes. The Owen was in the Ira Owen was one of the ships that sank in a very bad storm, and he just happened to be on the ship. Everybody was saying that he was either the captain or the mate at the time that he was being paid to be there, but the brother explained in the newspaper article, no, he wasn't there as one of the crew. He knows the owner of the ship, and the owner of the ship was giving him passage to another meeting that he had in another city. So he was explaining what had happened, which I didn't know, so it was good information for me to find out. Now in Genealogy Bank, they have 217 newspapers in Michigan. And they start by the city, all in alphabetical order, down here in the left corner. And then on the side here, they tell you the years that they cover for each newspaper. So this one starts in 1893 and goes to 1934, and there's 12,742 issues available. The next one is 1900 to 1903, and they have 2 issues. So it's whatever they can find. You know, an old newspaper, you probably don't have all of the copies. And so that's what they have for that one. So I went to the Detroit newspapers, and all of these on this page are Detroit newspapers. And that's not even the whole list. So Genealogy Bank, if you're looking for very early local history, because Detroit is our local history too, then this is the website to go to. So I went to the Detroit Gazette. It ran from 1817 to 1830, and they have 36 issues available. So you go and you can put in the name of the person, first and last name, and you can do an advanced search. So that's the easy way of doing it. An advanced search, you can put in a date range if you wanted to, and you can add keywords. That's what makes it an advanced search. And you can also ask for exact name search. But not everybody spells the same way, and the exact name for me never really works that well. So I did a search. I'm one of the people who are working on the research for Bellevue House in Amherstburg. So I'm writing all the history articles, so I have to do all the research. So I put in Reynolds. You just put in the last name, Reynolds, see what pops up. And what I found was letters to Canada are sitting in the post office in Detroit. Come and pick up your letters. And in the letters, there's letters to Catherine Reynolds and to her brother Ebenezer Reynolds. So you might be able to find the names of your family just on little things like that, that help you to fill in some, okay, they definitely were there at that time, if you weren't quite sure about the years that they were in an area. The other article I found was Town Lots for Sale by Robert Reynolds. Now, Robert Reynolds is the one who built Bellevue House. The house was built between 1816 and 1819. It's still in Amherstburg. That means it's 200 years old. His wife's father-in-law from a previous marriage was James McGill of McGill University fame from Montreal, because he owned the Northwest Fur Trading Company. And Amherstburg was a post for the Northwest Fur Trading Company. He died in 1813. In his will, he left property to John Askin in Detroit, a certain amount, I think it was like 1,200 acres. If there was any property over that amount of property was to go to Robert Reynolds. So I am thinking that these 3 pieces of property in downtown Detroit were probably property of James McGill that Robert Reynolds got, and he is now trying to sell it. Maybe that's how he paid for his new house. But it's another piece of the puzzle. You can see how Amherstburg is spelled with an extra H on the end. That's the old spelling. Okay, this one's Find My Past. This one's through England. Now, you go to search, up here it's search, then you go down to newspapers, and you've got British newspapers, Irish newspapers, the Periodical Source Index, which is also called Percy. How many do not know what Percy is? Okay, Percy was started by the library in Indiana. What's it called? Allen County Library. And they've gone through all of the different journals and written down everybody's names that are in all the articles, and it's available through Percy. So you can search through Percy for family members or other people that were connected to them. So like I had Edward Hazel as one of my loyalist ancestors, and if I looked for his boss, who was the governor of Detroit, I can find articles about my Edward Hazel working for Governor Hamilton through Percy. So that's what Percy's really good for. And it's very interesting that it's on a British website and not on Ancestry. Ancestry may have it, but it may not be the full, complete version of it. Okay, with Find My Past, these are the countries that they're using. So they've got the US and world newspapers, Canada, China, Denmark, France, Germany, Jamaica, Japan, South America, and the United States. So all of these different companies like Ancestry and Find My Past and MyHeritage are trying to become the place to put all of the information for the world. So you really have to look at all 3 of them sometimes to find the information that you want. Okay, so I did a search. Oh, here we are. US and world newspapers. You can do it by state, by the publication, and by the date. So you can write in a specific date. So if you knew the death date of somebody, and you knew which state they died in, Just put in the date and see if the state comes up, and you might find the newspaper obituary. So I put in Canada. Oh, they got 7 million up here, articles. For them, by Canada, they have the provinces covered are Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Newfoundland. Newfoundland was a colony of the British for a lot longer than the rest of Canada. So it's interesting that they've got Newfoundland on there for the British one. But this is the best website for anything for England, because the whole newspaper is searchable. It's not just the birth, marriage, and death records that they have. So I went on, I have British ancestry, and I've done an awful lot of work on them. And so I went over here, and I'm just notice it's not US up here, it would be that top button that said British, or United Kingdom. And I put in for 1850 to 1899, and I put in Eliza Back, and I put in Devon, England. 18 different articles came up. And there's my Eliza Back. Eliza Back. Eliza Back. They even show you what you should be looking for in the article. Now this one says it's from Woodbury Petty Sessions, 1860. And this one is the Bristol Assizes Cowardly and Atrocious, would go on. And it's in the Western Times. Well, they're both in the Western Times. This one's 1863. But they're on the same article, the same court case. Now, the court case, you know, the papers are really big like this, right? Most of that page was this court case. And they told word by word what everybody said. It was the whole court case. And near the end of it was this part by Eliza Butt. Now look at the information they give about Eliza Butt. Eliza Butt, who lives in Epford, Woodbury, and was married on the 10th of January last. Her former name being Eliza Back. I've got her married name. I've got her maiden name. I've got her marriage date. All in a newspaper article. I don't have to go to the British government and ask for a marriage certificate. Or at least I can do it and I know exactly which one I'm looking for. This whole court case was because a man and a woman were dating. And she decided she didn't like him, so she decided to drop him. He decided to slander her and say, we've already slept together. And the whole court case is, were they left alone in a room? Were they beside each other? Was there anybody else there? Did they put the screens up? Type of thing. And my Eliza Butt, or Eliza Back, whichever one you want to use, her former name was called to prove that in the early part of 1862, she negotiated with the plaintiff and her mother in respect to a proposal to enter the plaintiff's service. So she was going to become their servant. And she swore her information on the, then intimidated her. She swore that the plaintiff then intimidated her intention of being married to Mr. Stogden and wished to take her as a servant. They could not, however, agree as to the wages, and the mother proposed a small addition to the wages, and the At the sale of Post Lake, Mr. Stogden was taking down prices as they were accepted by Mr. Hussey, the auctioneer for the goods. So in other words, she was one of the people who was a witness to what was going on within the family. He lost the court case, the woman won. Yes! And everybody found out he was a heel. So this is why newspapers come in handy. They give you the information that is between that birth date and that death date. So after you find the birth and death dates of your ancestors, try and go through the newspapers and find the interesting things that happened in their family. Eliza Back also was a person who was in other court cases where somebody hit her, and she took them to court for that because they were drunk. I like Eliza Back. Okay, we're now into myheritage.com. OGS is working with MyHeritage, and one of the advantages you have, if you're a member of OGS, you can pay $10, which is a very small fee to get onto a website, and you can get access to their library edition. So I'm going to show you how to access it through OGS. This is not the regular access that you would use if you had a full subscription. This is only if you have the $10 subscription for MyHeritage through OGS. So you have to go to the OGS website, and I don't know how to find it otherwise, but I just put in search MyHeritage, and up comes the website. So it says MyHeritage Library Edition Portal. So if you want to purchase it, that's where you click here to purchase your code. They give you a long number. It's something you will never be able to memorize. It's like 10 or 12 numbers. That number you have to keep forever. It's not a one-time deal and you put it in once. Every time you use the portal, you have to use that number. It doesn't remember it in the computer. So make sure you write it down so that you still get your subscription to be used. And then down here, click here to MyHeritage Library Edition, and then you get into it. And then you put your number in, and then it takes you to this spot where it says MyHeritage Library Edition. You click on that, and then you're in. So it does not give you full access to MyHeritage, but it does give you access to a lot of things on it. Newspapers in MyHeritage include Australia. So if you have family members that move to Australia, you could get access to some of those newspapers. The USA seem to be much earlier than Ancestry.ca, their newspaper records. They have Ohio, they don't have all 50 states though. They have Ohio, New York, Indiana, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. And this also includes journals. So there's journals as well as newspapers. And they have the complete copies of the newspapers. So down here you put in the name of the person, the year of birth that you think, where they were born, and a key word could be the name of the ship, it could be what kind of a occupation they had. Maybe they were a baker, you put in baker and you might get a better click. I find when I'm doing these kinds of historical searches, the fewer words I put in, the more I get. And these are the newspapers. They've got the newspapers listed over here. So they've got Pennsylvania newspapers are new. They have 1795 to 2009. They've got 7,514,388 pages in 70 newspapers. So that's where you can look to see just if there could be anything there that matches where your family was living. Okay, this is the one I wanted to talk to on the most, and it's from SWOTA. SWOTA is the Southwestern Ontario Digital Archive, and it's free. So you can just put in SWOTA. Well, it says up there swota.uwindsor.ca/SWOTA/. That's one way to get into it. There's multiple ways, okay? It wasn't started by the University of Windsor. It was started by another group, Ontario Digital Records, I think it was called. Our Digital World is one name it's got, and they've got inc.scholarsportal.info, or inc.ourdigitalworld.org. So like there's 3 different websites, but they all go to the same place. SWOTA actually goes to more things than just the newspapers. So if you look down here, they've got other things, Essex County Newspaper Database, and they got newspapers online. But this is the website I like, and I use it a lot. Whoops, let's go back. So up here, see it says inc.ourdigitalworld.org. And I used it before SWOTA got into it. The microfilm for the newspapers from the Windsor Public Library are being digitized by this group. They've got the Amherstburg Echo, they've got all the different Windsor newspapers, they've got the Fugitive Slave newspaper, the black newspapers as well. So you can search newspapers. Navigation is a good spot to go to. So you can do an advanced search instead of just doing search newspapers. List of titles. It tells you all the different newspapers that are available and their timelines. My bookmarks, I guess that's where you would save whatever ones that you have found. And you've got a timeline, and I'll explain all of those in a minute. So here's the list of titles. Now, the list goes on much longer than this, but I didn't want to scroll and show you a whole bunch of pages, but this is the beginning. So, Acton Free Press, 1875 to 1984. The Acton Tanners, 1992 to 2001. The Amherstburg Courier, 1849 to 1850, which is great because the Amherstburg Echo doesn't start until 1874. So that means there's no Amherstburg paper between 1850 and 1874. The Barrie Examiner, so it's not just Essex County. The Border City Star is a Windsor paper before the Windsor Star. There is also the Herald, the Western Herald. It's a hoot to read that one. It's from the 1837 to 42 time period, which was the time of the rebellion, the 1837 rebellion. So all of the Canadians are mad at the Americans. And they just lambaste those Americans so bad in that paper. Like, they tell what they felt like. They didn't just pussyfoot around it. It's fun to read. Okay. Oops. They also give you a map, and they show you where the different newspapers are located. So you can see all of southwestern Ontario is pretty much covered, all the way up to Kingston. All of these, I don't think there are any in Detroit, but there's one in Cleveland. And if your family member was a sailor, that was the Marine Record newspaper. So it would be talking about all the ships and all the transports that were on the Great Lakes, and who was the captain and things like that. So if you're into ship history, that would be a good newspaper to get into, okay? Okay, let's do an advanced search. This is what I did to practice so I could come and talk to you. So I put in Matthew Elliott. Matthew Elliott was a loyalist. He lived in Amherstburg. He owned 3,000 acres, and the farm that my husband and I live on, which is originally only 100 acres, was part of his 3,000. He was the superintendent of the Indian Affairs, well, it was the Indian Department at the time, during the American Revolution and into the War of 1812. I just put his name in just for fun, just to see what happens. And I didn't put in the newspaper. Okay, so it'll come up with any Matthew, or any Elliott, or any Matthew Elliott in all of the newspapers. So they've got 80,213 to look at. It tells you all the numbers of articles that have that name in it. Now remember, it's either Matthew or Elliott. So it could be Matthew Crowder, It could be Matthew Harrison. It doesn't have to be Matthew Elliott. Because I did not put quotation marks around the name. If you put quotation marks around the name, I find on this website a lot of times it comes up 0. It doesn't seem to like to recognize two names together. So I put in Matthew Elliott and I went to the Leamington Post, and over here on the side is the date of the newspaper, November 26, 1908. Now, he's been dead about 100 years. And on page 3 of 8 pages, I find the record of his grandson dying. His grandson was the one who sold the property to my husband's family in 1869. And this is his obituary. So if you're doing a whole family history, even though you put one person's name in, you may find another family member. Because it says, was the grandson of Colonel Matthew Elliott. Yes?
Can I just ask, would the other Elliots come up with one T? It would always be this one that's got 2 T's, right?
I think it comes up basically with the way you spell it.
Okay.
You would have to go back and put it in for, yes,
Okay.
put it in the other way of spelling.
Okay. Just wondered.
That's fine. Okay? Now, I put in Matthew Elliott's name, and I've already told you that I'm working on the Reynolds house, the history of it. The Border City Stars comes up in 1925, and it's got a section with Matthew Elliott's name in it. I have not seen this article before. I forgot to look at the Border City Star. But historic old Reynolds house to be restored. 1925, Mr. John G. Mullen bought the property and decided he was going to restore it. He restored it to what it looks like now. Looked a lot better in those days, but anyways, what's really interesting is this picture, because we are always looking for pictures. I do the history on the family, and my husband does the history on the architecture. This picture shows very clearly that the second floor over this small section was not there. So that means it was built as a second story when John G. Mullen bought it. Why he needed to have those extra rooms, I don't know. He was 77 years old when he bought the house. He died 2 years after it was done, so like 5 years after he bought it, he had died. All of his children were grown. He had 2 sons that never married. He had 1 daughter that married. That was it. So it's interesting that they added those rooms. But if they had not added those rooms, it may not have become the hospital for the World War I veterans in 1944. Because they had more bedrooms. And they were there until 1955. So you never know what you're going to find in these articles. It's just sort of fit with one of the other things I was working on. Now, the other thing is the timeline coverage. So you can do this a different way. So I used my mother's death. My mother died in 1981. So I put 1981 down here, and then you press go. Then the 1981 shows up here, and you get all the newspapers, and you pick the newspaper that you want. So I picked the Leamington Post, and then hit select. And up comes a calendar. So for the Leamington Post, these are all the dates that they have digitized on the website. And all you have to do, my mom died on the 16th. She was not in the paper that day, so I went to the 23rd. The 23rd comes up here. See, Wednesday, September 23rd. And then down here, you click on this one, and you get the complete newspaper by page. If you're into reading newspapers a lot, you can usually figure out what page has the birth, marriages, and deaths? Some newspapers will, if it's an important person, they will put the big obituary story on the front page. But the birth, marriages, and deaths sometimes are in the last page, or they're on the 4th or 5th page, depending on where the publication wants to put it. So I went to page 25 of 31. So you look over here, there's the date of the paper, there's the date of the page, or that's the page 25, there's 31 pages, and then over here on the far right is my mother's obituary. Now, this green arrow that I have over here is pointing to this little thing here. So, you've got this article, you want a copy of it, right? You don't just want to see it on the computer, you want to save it. So you click on this little button, and it changes the, the little cursor, changes the cursor to like a cross shape, a plus sign. And you go over here and you take the size that you want, let go, and then this blank page shows up. And you click on that, it says open this image in a new window. And then you get just that article. You don't want the whole page. A newspaper page does not show up very big on a piece of 8.5 by 11 paper. Now, with this website, sometimes it doesn't work. And it frustrates me to no end when I want something and it doesn't come up. But this one did. And it gives me all of the information that I already knew, but it was a way of getting a copy of it. And then I could print it from my computer. So what's so good about newspapers? Finding out about an ancestor's life and not just the dates. You get the birth, marriage, and death notices usually in there. School records. You've got the sports events, the competitions. I found an article in the 1940s where my mother's school had a kite flying contest. And it was, the boys had their contest and the girls had their contest. They were never together, right? And they were talking about the kites, and one kite looked like Adolf Hitler, and another kite looked like a plane type of thing. My mom won second prize. I was proud of her. School plays, yearly final marks. I can go into that newspaper and see what marks my parents had when they were in elementary school. And when you see the list, they tell you the name of the teacher, the grade, and they tell you the names of the children and their average for the year. And it always has the top marked, they're all not in alphabetical order. They're in, whoever gets the highest mark is at the top, and whoever got the lowest mark in the class is at the bottom. It's very interesting to see how well your parents did in school. But as you know, things like that aren't in the papers anymore. They don't do as much of the local gossip stuff because that's all just on, that's either privacy or it's the stuff that's on Facebook because somebody put it on. Okay, accidents. I found out my dad was in a car accident and everybody said it wasn't their fault. Local gossip, like there's an illness. I found out that my grandfather was in the hospital and he had his gallbladder removed. Returning home from visits, they say, Mr. Mullen went to Chicago to visit his sister. And then a couple of weeks later, Mr. Mullen returned from visiting his sister. It's a way of finding out where other family members went. Like don't realize they've moved, but we can't figure out where they've gone. Running for political office. My uncle ran for school trustee for Leamington. Advertising a family business. My grandfather ran a flower business. I could get an advertisement to add to my family history of his ad that he put into the newspaper. Participation in local clubs such as the Legion. Okay, how many people have heard of the Daughters of the Empire? Oh, a couple. I didn't know. My grandparents were part of that group. And they tell you what they did. The kind of games they played. They went to people's houses and who won the games and who got the prizes. And It's really cool. The Masonic Lodge, they had their whole meetings in the newspaper. The Odd Fellows, which is the IOOF. The sports clubs, who was playing golf, who was playing baseball. Pictures of them in their baseball outfits. So there's a lot of stories that are in the older newspapers at the local end that aren't necessarily in the papers nowadays. So I hope you've enjoyed this. This is a picture of myself at the age of 3 reading the newspaper. I was too small to pick it up, and it was just a couple of months before my old sister was born. My dad took my picture. So it's one of those things I've kept. Now, how much time have we got? We're good?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's my talk. How many would like to try and use it live for that Ontario newspapers article? Or have you had enough? Okay, you'll have to help me.
Sure.
It's her computer. Sort of. Can you put it up here on the podium? This cord's not long enough. Okay. Yeah, grab your chair and.
I think that's not the website you want.
No, that's right. That's a different slogan.
Yeah.
Wow, look at that.
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. Okay, use E. That one? That one. Okay, I'm gonna sit down. Sorry, I have bad knees, so it takes a while to get in. There it is. Okay, go down. Her mouse is different than mine. I have a ball, and she just has a line. Okay, Essex County newspapers.
By the way, can you hold that right there? Catherine Ball runs the SPOTA. Catherine Ball lets us use her scanning equipment to scan the yearbooks and everything else. So she's been very, very helpful to our group.
Okay, now I'm not used to getting into it this way. Can I just go in here? Dave? Do I just go to this one for the newspapers?
Yep, I think that would. There's usually no,
It's a dog.
no, never mind, sorry, that's a.
That's just
Word
a
doc.
file.
Yep.
I thought above it where it said Essex.
Yeah.
See where it says Essex County newspapers?
Can you click on the heading there, under home, right in the middle? Down, down.
Right.
There, yeah, one down, no.
There's home.
No, it was the title underneath home.
You know what? I
No,
don't
no, use the backspace on the left, top left,
Bags.
top left, the back arrow, top left.
Way up. Oh, way up there.
The heading, yeah, no, there's nothing there.
I don't think so. Okay, I'm going to ink dot scholars portal dot.
Misspelled portal.
I spelled it wrong.
Need an R in there.
I need an R.
No, it's not.
No,
After the old proto. Okay. I taught grade 1. I didn't teach higher education. Portal. Okay, I see that works. Can't reach this page.
probably not an ink or.
What about ink dot our digital world?
There we go. Info. How often do you put info in something? It's or, com. So here it is. Okay. So this is live. And we'll go to advanced. Okay. So when you're searching, you can put anybody's name in here, or you can go down a little bit farther. And you can put in containing the phrase or containing none of the words. So you can add a little bit more to those.
How about Simon Gertie?
Simon Gertie. You want Simon Gertie? Any newspaper, or did you want a specific newspaper?
Try Amherstburg, I guess. Oh, well,
You
a
want
bit too late.
Amherstburg Echo?
They're not old enough, I guess.
It's not old enough, but
Yeah.
I'm sure there's articles written about him. He's famous.
Right.
Found 1,731. But look, it
But
says
look,
Simon
Simon.
Stanley Canister
And cardigans.
and cardigans, sweaters instead of Simon. So those are all coming through pretty good though. There's Lillian Anna Simon. So it's not really coming up with Simon Gertie, is it?
What about just Gertie?
Yep.
Use
So
the
we go
back
back to advanced search. And put in Gertie. I didn't put in the newspaper. Did it go? So it's showing Georgetown girls for Gertie. The OCR is not the best.
Yeah.
Which is the one that reads the words, or the newspaper was not scanned well enough for it to pick up what words it is. Now, sometimes these come up wrong, and they say, look at the newspaper. And that's where you can't get the access for that, and that frustrates me even more than this. 1958, let's see what they've got. Girls, you're not picking up anything tonight. Okay, so let's try something different. Anybody got a name they want to search?
How about that apple one? What was this?
Appleyard?
Appleyard.
Appleyard.
Okay, let's see what Appleyard comes up with. Oh, I know. Sometimes it only goes if you hit search. Yeah, there's a Peter Appleyard.
Any particular name?
Doors.
Okay, where would they be living?
They passed through Windsor, they were married in Windsor. And they lived
Married in
in
Windsor?
Bloomington,
What time?
1925.
Okay, we go to Border City Stars.
Did you say they ended up in Leamington?
No, they ended up in Burby, Kincardine, but they had a lot of family in this area. They lived in Blenheim.
Yeah, do any of these names look familiar to you?
Henry Appleyard. Actually, what year is it? 2021? No, it's too new, but that's very possible. Actually, that one was probably related. 1921, at the bottom, page 3. I see a couple family names, Amos and Henry.
You click on the name, William Appleyard carried to grave. and you can make it smaller or
Yeah,
bigger.
really in Brooks Fall, yeah. Okay,
Okay,
yeah.
I found often too, Amherstburg Echo recopied a lot of stuff that was in other local newspapers.
yes,
So if you went to the Amherstburg Echo, you could usually find anything.
yeah,
And then
I
there's the
found,
Windsor paper.
I found weddings from Leamington for my family.
Yeah.
In the Amherstburg Echo.
Because if it was in the Windsor paper today, next week it would be in the Amherstburg Echo.
Okay, see this details thing? If your article that you want is in that first column, you can close it and you can still access the article. You can move it over.
There's a card of thanks for the apple yards.
Yeah,
So, second one.
down here. And you might want to, so that's the article there. And then you can find the, where it says birth, deaths, and marriages, and find the little one as well.
Oh, that actually is probably relation, so it's.
Now, you said 1925, they got married?
Yeah,
So if you go down here, there's 1925 and there's 4 of them. So you can click just on that date. See, this is the one I hate. Please see newspaper page for details, because you can't access that one. Do you have any idea when?
no,
Look at the,
yeah.
Further down, there's another 25.
yeah, I got it. So if you get these and you're living in Windsor, you've got the date, you've got the page number and the newspaper, go upstairs to the second floor and look for the microfilm. For that picture I had of Bellevue House, I came back to the library and Tom Vedic helped me with the newest computer they've got for microfilm. And we fixed the picture so it looked a little bit better than what it did on the copy that on this page. So we tried to improve the picture from the microfilm. So that's another sort of thing that you can do. So, any other name? No? Okay. Well, thank you for coming. I hope you learned something.
Well, Deborah, that was very informative. And, yeah, the SWOTA website has been, or ink has been very useful. It's a research tool. I know anybody been to the Marsh collection in Amherstburg, they use it quite regularly down there. So it's very useful to us. And I was over in Detroit at the Genealogical meetings there and talked about the SWOTA ink as well. So they were very excited. There was a lot of border crossings of families and things. So they were really excited because it was free. So. Anyway.
The Marsh collection has the original newspapers of the Amherstburg Echo. So if you're having difficulty reading it off of this website, go there and they'll let you take a picture with your camera of that page.
Or they have a scanner.
Yeah, but I think they'll just, doing it with the camera is much easier.
Yeah. Hey, Deborah, we have a small card. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate you coming again. Deborah's one of our regular students. We love having you. So. Anyway, I appreciate everyone coming, and we have access to this room for another half an hour, so feel free to network or ask Deborah some questions or assistance with some of the newspapers that you might need. So, anyway, thank you for coming.